So we already are talking about making plans at this point of the cycle here, because when we did the last video where we actually broke down that large goal into smaller chunks, that is making a plan. And even within that video, we talked about adding to the actual goals little notes about how we're going to implement that within that plan. So we're already in the realm of planning as we start making really, really good goals and chunk those goals. So chunking a large goal into a smaller one already counts as planning. But making good goals is more than just that. And planning is more than just that. It's about thinking about what could go wrong and anticipating that, and then making a plan to maybe try to avoid that from happening. And then also thinking about what has worked out in the past and then using that to do better. So the last time you reflected, you probably said to yourself, well, this works for me or this doesn't work for me. And therefore, using that to actually make sure that when you study again, you study smarter, not harder. Okay, so the first piece of that is I usually have a reflection that I do with my students that has to do with what worked for you in the past and what has not worked for you in the past. But how do you know what has worked and what has not worked in the past? Every time my students do a learning cycle, I help them go into the Summit system, and there's actually a place within the platform for this where they can actually take notes in the progress screen. So every time they pass a content assessment, they will go into the notes, and then they will do a quick little reflection. This is what worked best for me this time. This is what did not work best for me this time. And when they get more advanced, I'll even ask them to actually time themselves studying to see how much time they invested on it. I ask questions about like, did you find yourself distracted? Did you find yourself confused? Did you find yourself frustrated? Because what you want to find is resources and strategies that will actually save you time and effort when it comes to deciding how to tackle an actual power focused area. So you also want to not hurt your motivation. So every time you do this cycle, if you take notes on what you did and how you felt about what you did, you're going to be less likely to, next time around, repeat the same mistakes. Some students that I have even kept a tracking sheet, which I have a sample of that in the description down below, that you can use to actually note how some of these things and keep track of your study process, so that over time you realize if that worked for you or if that did not work for you. So here's an example of what that could look like. So you have a basic tracking sheet where you actually write on the left side the name of the focus area that you study for. So let's say I do ecosystems. And then I write the number of total days that I spent studying for it. Let's say by the time I finish, it was 5 days. And a lot of times I'll tell kids to tally as they go along because they're keeping track of this. They will also keep track of the different resources they use and for how long they took. So let's say they use a study guide and they spent 30 minutes filling it out, and they watched a review video and they took 40 minutes to do that. And so they will actually keep track of the different things that they're doing to complete that study process. And that's why it took 5 days or whatnot. So then they will actually say, what are some of the learning strategies that I actually used when trying to study for this test? Did I study with a friend? And we quizzed each other and we did that for about 30 minutes. Or I attended a workshop with a teacher for about 20 minutes, right? And let's say I also did checks for understanding. Which was about 10 minutes long. And that actually could count also as a resource because it's something that's within the platform that I use. So I just keep tracking of that. And then they will say, here's some things that I felt. Then they actually take the test, right? And they say, okay, I got 8 out of 10. So that worked, right? Or if they didn't work, they will say I got a 7 out of 10. But that could also be that it worked because if they used to get a 5 out of 10 and they got a 7 out of 10 now, so the what worked and what didn't work is more of a reflection where they actually stop to think about which one of these things went well for me, which ones did not. So 8 out of 10 went great. Um, I might even actually also add what worked and did it. I might even add a different column that says testing strategies. So what did I do during the test to help me try to pass? So I got an 8 out of 10. I use process of elimination. I use breathing techniques. I use quiet space. I use read out loud. What are some of the strategies that actually helped you pass that test, right? Okay, so what worked and what didn't. Classroom was not quiet enough when I was taking the test, so that was a problem for me. I can say uh, my friend and I goofed around and wasted time when we quiz each other. So you can actually write notes on your study process. And then you can also write feelings. Like, what is it how did you feel doing this? So you can say, objective two frustrated me, too many key terms to memorize, right? So whatever it is that frustrated you in doing that process. So why do this? I like doing this because over time, as you complete this log, you start picking up patterns of where you're wasting time, what resources work for you and which ones don't, right? What learning strategies seem to lead you to a good test result, uh, and so forth, right? So if you get an 8 out of 10, that is something that worked. And so maybe you can say, I really like using the study guide. It really helped me identify the key points to focus on. So you can actually realize the parts of your study process that you liked and didn't like. And then over time, as you go through multiple different power focus areas, you can start picking up patterns and become a better student as you go through it. So this is not only about planning, it's about tracking your plan so that you can reflect better and plan better next time. Choose better strategies, choose better resources, choose better test taking strategies, and even become better at reflecting itself. I also have several resources that help students engage in this intentional process. So this, for example, is called the Focus Area Tour document, and it will walk you through the actual learning cycle and help you build a plan and actually be accountable for your study process and reflect as you go throughout. Similarly, there's one that's called the Focus Area Checklist that students will go through as they're completing the process. It will help guide them through their learning process. There is also a content readiness reflection that I like to use, which is basically a series of questions that a student asks itself or answers to see if they're truly ready for the test before they actually take it. So these are all things that I have available in the resources linked down below that I strongly recommend that you engage with. Now, again, all of these are strategies, are tools that you would use and see if that helps you do better or not within your study process. And so when it comes to planning, I'm just very intentional about anticipating those things that could work and it could not. And the only way to know that is to keep track of that over time. But some of the questions that I always have my students ask themselves is, what are some of the things that usually don't work for you, and how can you avoid them? So this is my answer, like, I don't like sitting next to this guy. I really like him, but if I do, I always get distracted. So maybe I should find a quiet place to go work. You know, we get together to do online remote meetings to study together, but we end up fooling around most of the time and wasting your independent learning time. It's like, if I probably should study with someone else or by myself, it will be more productive. So it's identifying those weaknesses and then also the strengths, right? I really respond well to videos. Videos suck for me. I hate having to pause and rewind and watch it in slow motion. So what are some of those things that work and don't work for you? And thinking about that ahead of time will help you decide on which strategies to actually use. And as we shift from planning to focus, or in our next couple of videos, we're going to be talking about what are some of the strategies that I like to tell students about, and that is how you actually engage in the learning process. But that also fits with planning, because in your planning stage, you would ahead of time anticipate the strategy you will want to use. And in fact, I would even encourage students when they go to their week screen and they're actually making a goal that says, for example, I'm going to study for ecosystems objective 1, they can add on the plan there, I'm going to, so they actually have plan ideas on things that you're going to do, right? But you can also write your own. I'm going to use the Khan Academy video. And I am going to pause, rewind, or slow down the video as needed to take the notes. So that will help me get those 2 pages of notes within the 50 minutes, because I really do really well and respond to videos. Now, don't forget that there's even a drop-down menu with some ideas for plans that you can use. And these are just basically strategies, tools, techniques that you can actually engage in to improve your process. On the next video, we're going to talk about a manual of those strategies and help you come up with some of them. I'll see you guys on the next. See you guys then. Hopefully, you found these resources helpful.